in the hope that somebody will come along and say, there's money in this, let's support Meghan and her as ever brand.
A London courtroom just exploded with the most shocking revelation in royal history. Harry's face went completely white. Meghan literally ran out crying. What investigative legend Tom Bower just revealed under oath about Archie will destroy everything.
I thought she behaved so badly, and Harry too.
A hidden DNA test. A secret ex-husband who never left. Palace insiders finally break their silence after years of lies. This isn't speculation anymore. This is testimony that could end the Sussex bloodline forever. Inside courtroom number 7, every seat was occupied. International media representatives filled the gallery, their equipment ready to capture what many suspected would be a historic moment. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, the kind that precedes events people will remember for years to come. This wasn't about a typical property dispute or even a celebrity divorce. The case at hand touched on questions about the British royal family, an institution that has fascinated and divided public opinion for generations. When Tom Bower entered the courtroom, many in attendance immediately recognized him. For those unfamiliar with his work, Bower has built a reputation over decades as an investigative journalist and author. His career includes stints at the BBC and extensive work as a writer, producing books that have examined the lives of powerful figures across business, media, and politics. His methodology is well known in journalistic circles. He conducts extensive research, interviews numerous sources, and presents findings that often challenge official narratives. Bower's presence in a courtroom delivering testimony under oath carried significant weight. Unlike speculation published in tabloids or commentary pieces, testimony given in court comes with legal consequences. Perjury, the act of lying under oath, is a serious criminal offence in the United Kingdom. This context made what was about to unfold particularly noteworthy. Prince Harry sat in the spectator section, dressed in a dark suit. Observers in the courtroom later described his demeanour as tense. His wife, Meghan Markle, sat beside him. The couple, who have been the subject of intense media scrutiny since their relationship became public in 2016, appeared prepared for what was expected to be a difficult day. However, nothing could have fully prepared anyone in that room for what Tom Bower was about to present. The testimony began with Bower speaking in measured tones. He didn't engage in theatrical flourishes or emotional appeals. Instead, he proceeded methodically, laying out what he claimed to have discovered through his investigative work. The core of his testimony centered on questions about Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, the first child of Harry and Meghan, born in May 2019. Bower raised the name Trevor Engelson, a film producer who was married to Meghan from 2011 to 2013. For those who had followed Meghan's life before she joined the royal family, Engelson was a known figure, but one who had largely remained out of the public eye following the divorce. Bower's testimony suggested that Engelson's connection to this story was far more significant than previously understood. The journalist then mentioned something he called Operation Cuckoo. The term itself carries historical weight. In nature, cuckoo birds are known for laying their eggs in the nests of other birds, who then raise the young as their own. The metaphorical implications of using this term in relation to questions of parentage were immediately clear to everyone present. What made the courtroom fall into pronounced silence was the nature of the claims being made. Bower wasn't simply questioning timeline details or suggesting impropriety in a general sense. He was making specific assertions about genetic lineage and the line of succession to the British throne. These are matters of constitutional significance in the United Kingdom, where the monarchy, despite being largely ceremonial in modern times, still holds symbolic importance and where succession follows strict hereditary rules. The reaction in the courtroom was immediate and visible. Harry's expression, as described by those present, changed markedly. The colour appeared to drain from his face. His posture, already tense, became rigid. For a man who has spent much of his adult life in the public eye, managing his expressions during difficult moments, this visible reaction spoke volumes to observers. Meghan's response was even more dramatic. According to multiple accounts from people present, she stood abruptly during the testimony. Tears were visible on her face as she moved toward the courtroom exit. The sound of the door closing behind her echoed through the otherwise silent room. For a woman who has been criticised in some quarters for being too controlled and calculated in her public appearances, this display of raw emotion was striking. The questions that Bauer raised touched on several specific points that have been the subject of speculation in various media outlets over the years. The circumstances surrounding Archie's birth have long been a topic of discussion. Unlike previous royal births, which followed well-established protocols and traditions, Archie's arrival was handled differently. The location of the birth, initially reported as one hospital and later clarified to be another, added to questions that some members of the public and media had already been asking. Traditional royal births in recent decades have been public affairs to varying degrees. When Prince William and Catherine had their children, they appeared on the steps of the hospital shortly after each birth, following a pattern established by Princess Diana. Harry and Meghan chose a more private approach, which was certainly their right as parents. However, this departure from tradition, combined with other unusual aspects of how information about the birth was released, led to speculation. One point that Bauer emphasized in his testimony concerned the birth certificate. Birth certificates for royal children are public documents in the United Kingdom, available for anyone to inspect. Archie's birth certificate was made public, as required by law. However, approximately 2 months after its initial registration, the document was modified. The change involved removing Meghan's first names from the certificate, leaving only her title. While this modification was noted by media at the time and explained by representatives for the Sussexes as a matter of preference to align with royal protocol, it added another element to the questions some people were already asking. Bauer's testimony also touched on the involvement, or lack thereof, of certain royal physicians. Traditionally, senior members of the royal family have births attended by the Queen's gynecologists, a practice that goes back generations. This didn't occur with Archie's birth, which was again explained as a personal choice by Harry and Meghan. However, in the full context of Bauer's broader testimony about questions regarding paternity, these departures from tradition took on potential new significance. The journalist presented what he described as a timeline, one that he claimed showed overlapping connections between Meghan and Trevor Engelson during the period when she was also in a relationship with Harry. These weren't vague suggestions. Bauer spoke about specific evidence he claimed to have reviewed, including communications records and travel information. He mentioned testimony from individuals he characterized as palace insiders, people who had worked within the royal household and had observed events firsthand. The weight of these claims wasn't simply in their sensational nature, it was in the specificity and the context. Bauer wasn't making these assertions in a book, where publishers and authors have more latitude in what they can print, especially in the United States where libel laws differ from those in the UK. He was making them under oath in a British court, where the consequences for false testimony are severe. The immediate question that arose, both in the courtroom and in subsequent media coverage, was why Bauer would take such a significant risk unless he believed he had solid evidence to support his claims. His reputation, built over decades of work, was now completely tied to the veracity of what he was presenting. If his claims proved false or unsupportable, the professional and potentially legal consequences would be substantial. Understanding the significance of Tom Bauer's testimony requires understanding who he is and how he has operated throughout his career. Bauer is not a newcomer to investigative journalism or to examining the lives of powerful people. His career spans several decades, beginning with his work at the BBC, where he produced documentaries that often challenged established narratives about public figures. Over the years, he transitioned into writing books that have examined everyone, from media tycoons to political leaders, often uncovering information that subjects would have preferred remained private. What distinguishes Bauer's work from typical celebrity journalism is his methodology. He conducts extensive interviews, often speaking with dozens or even hundreds of sources for a single book. He reviews documents, compares accounts, and builds cases that are detailed and specific. His books about figures like Robert Maxwell, Mohammed Al-Fayed, and more recently, members of the royal family, have been notable for the level of detail they contain. Critics of his work sometimes argue that his sources have their own agendas, but supporters point out that he has rarely, if ever, been successfully sued for libel, which in the UK carries significant penalties. When Bauer published his book about Meghan Markle in 2022, it created considerable controversy. The book, which was critical of the Duchess of Sussex, made numerous claims about her behaviour and motivations. However, what he presented in the London courtroom in January 2026 went substantially further than anything in that publication. The book had raised questions and presented unflattering accounts from various sources. The court testimony, by contrast, made specific allegations about matters of genetic lineage and constitutional importance. During his testimony, Bauer focused significantly on the period between 2013 and 2018. This 5-year span covers the time from when Meghan finalized her divorce from Trevor Engelson through to when she married Prince Harry. According to the narrative that Harry and Meghan have presented in various interviews and through their representatives, this was a period when Meghan moved forward with her life independently. She continued building her acting career, became involved in various charitable causes, and eventually met Harry in the summer of 2016 through mutual friends. Bauer presented a different picture. He claimed that his investigation revealed ongoing contact between Meghan and Trevor Engelson throughout this period. This wasn't merely staying in touch as former spouses sometimes do. According to Bauer's testimony, the contact was substantial and continued even after Meghan began her relationship with Harry. He referenced what he described as hotel records, phone logs, and statements from individuals who had worked in various capacities around both Meghan and Trevor during this time. The specificity of these claims is worth noting. Bauer wasn't speaking in generalities. He mentioned particular time periods and claimed to have documentation that showed Trevor Engelson traveled to locations where Meghan was during periods that coincided with gaps in her filming schedule for the television show Suits. The show was filmed in Toronto, where Meghan lived for several years while working on the series. According to Bauer, there were instances when Meghan's schedule showed unexplained absences, and these periods allegedly corresponded with visits from Engelson. One of the more striking aspects of Bauer's testimony was his claim about palace insiders who had provided information. The British royal household operates with a level of discretion that is remarkable even by the standards of other institutions. Staff members who work for the royal family typically sign non-disclosure agreements and are expected to maintain confidentiality about what they observe. The idea that multiple people who had worked within this system would break that protocol and speak to a journalist even years after the events in question suggests something significant. Bauer characterized these sources as individuals who had become troubled by what they witnessed. He didn't name them in open court, which is standard practice for protecting sources. However, he indicated that these were not minor staff members, but rather people who had been in positions where they would have had direct observation of events and access to information. Their willingness to speak, according to Bauer, came from a sense that the truth about matters of constitutional importance was being suppressed. The journalist then moved to questions about Archie's birth and the unusual circumstances surrounding it. He pointed out that senior members of the royal family have traditionally had their children delivered by the Queen's gynecologists. This practice exists not just for medical reasons, but also to ensure that there is official, unimpeachable documentation of births that affect the line of succession. The fact that Harry and Meghan chose different medical arrangements was their prerogative, but in light of the other questions Bauer was raising, it took on additional significance. Bauer also emphasized the modification made to Archie's birth certificate. While the change was publicly acknowledged at the time and explained as a matter of aligning with royal protocol, Bauer suggested there might have been other motivations. He pointed out that the modification occurred at a time when the couple was coming under increasing scrutiny, and questions about various aspects of the pregnancy and birth were beginning to circulate more widely in both mainstream and social media. The timeline that Bauer presented to the court included what he characterized as a rushed engagement and wedding. Harry and Meghan began dating in the summer of 2016. They announced their engagement in November 2017 and were married in May 2018. By royal standards, this was indeed a relatively short courtship before marriage. Previous royal weddings in recent history typically involved longer periods between engagement and marriage. Prince William and Catherine, for example, announced their engagement in November 2010 but didn't marry until April 2011, and they had been dating for many years before that. Bauer suggested that the speed with which Harry and Meghan moved toward marriage might not have been purely about their passionate love for each other. He raised the possibility that there were practical considerations driving the timeline. If Meghan had become pregnant during a period when, as Bauer claimed, she was still in contact with her ex-husband, the timing would have been critical. Marrying Harry quickly would ensure that any child born would be presumed to be his, protected by both the social assumption of paternity within marriage and the difficulty of challenging such matters legally. The implications of what Bauer was suggesting extended far beyond personal drama. The British line of succession is governed by law, specifically the Act of Settlement and subsequent legislation. Only descendants of the appropriate royal bloodline can be in the line of succession. If a child were presented as being in that line but was not actually a biological descendant, this would constitute a form of fraud with constitutional implications. Bauer was careful to frame his arguments in terms of logic and evidence rather than personal animosity. He acknowledged that he was presenting a theory based on his investigation, but he emphasized that the theory was supported by documentation and testimony from credible sources. He posed a series of questions that he argued demanded answers. Why was so much about Archie's birth kept private when previous royal births had been more transparent? Why were traditional protocols not followed? Why did the birth certificate get modified? And most critically, why had there been no effort to address the speculation and rumours that had been circulating for years? The testimony also touched on Meghan's background and her approach to her career and personal life. Bauer characterised her as someone who was strategic and calculating in her decisions, someone who understood how to leverage opportunities and protect her interests. This wasn't necessarily meant as criticism in a business sense. Many successful people in entertainment and other fields operate strategically. However, in the context of the questions about Archie's paternity, this characterization suggested that decisions about relationships and timing might have been influenced by considerations beyond romantic love. Bauer referenced what he called encrypted communications. He claimed that during the period when Meghan was dating Harry, she used various methods to communicate that would not leave easily traceable records. This included encrypted messaging applications and email accounts that were not obviously connected to her. Again, the specificity of these claims was notable. Bauer wasn't just suggesting secret communications existed, he was claiming to have information about the methods used and the time periods during which they occurred. The question that hung over all of this testimony was why Trevor Engelson himself had remained silent. Following his divorce from Meghan, Engelson had not spoken publicly about their relationship or the reasons for its end. Even as Meghan became one of the most famous women in the world through her marriage to Harry, Engelson maintained his silence. This discretion could be interpreted in various ways. Perhaps he had signed a non-disclosure agreement as part of the divorce settlement. Perhaps he simply wanted to move on with his life and avoid the media circus that would inevitably result from speaking out. Or perhaps, as Bauer seemed to suggest, there were more complex reasons for his continued silence. Bauer argued that if his claims about ongoing contact between Meghan and Trevor were true, and if there were questions about Archie's paternity, then Trevor would be in an extraordinarily difficult position. Speaking out could expose him to legal action. It could also thrust him into a level of media attention that few people would want. On the other hand, remaining silent while questions swirled might also be weighing on him, particularly if there were aspects of the truth that he believed should be known. The court testimony included references to what Bauer called biological realities discovered in late 2018. This was after Harry and Meghan's wedding, but around the time when pregnancy would have been confirmed if Meghan conceived shortly after the marriage. Bauer suggested that if the pregnancy had actually begun before the wedding, or if there were any doubts about paternity, this would have created an urgent situation requiring careful management. The question of what Buckingham Palace knew and when they knew it forms a critical part of understanding the full scope of Tom Bauer's testimony. The British royal family operates through an extensive network of staff, advisors, and security personnel who are responsible for managing everything from public appearances to private family matters. The idea that something as significant as questions about paternity could arise without the palace being aware strains credibility. Bauer's testimony suggested that not only was the palace aware, but that deliberate decisions were made about how to handle the situation. According to Bauer's account, the palace was not caught off guard by Archie's birth in May 2019. He claimed that in the months leading up to the birth, and particularly in the immediate aftermath, certain protocols were quietly put into place. These weren't the public-facing protocols that people saw, such as the announcement of the birth or the eventual photo opportunity. Instead, these were internal procedures designed to verify information that the palace needed to know for matters of constitutional importance. Bauer referred to what he characterized as routine health checks, but suggested that the true purpose extended beyond typical medical screening. He claimed that genetic testing was conducted not openly or with any public acknowledgement, but through channels that would maintain absolute discretion. The facility he mentioned, Portland Hospital, is a private hospital in London known for treating high-profile patients. It has the asthma, capacity to conduct sophisticated medical testing while maintaining patient privacy. The testimony raised an obvious question. If such testing was conducted, and if it revealed information about Archie's parentage, where are those results now? Bower claimed that sources connected to the palace indicated the results were classified and stored in a secure location within Buckingham Palace itself. He mentioned a safe in the wine cellar, a detail specific enough to suggest either direct knowledge or information from someone with access to such details. According to his sources, only the most senior members of the royal family would have access to this safe. This claim presents several layers of complexity. First, if true, it would mean that senior royals, potentially including then Prince Charles and Prince William, would have known the truth about Archie's parentage for years. Second, it would mean they made a conscious decision to keep this information hidden rather than address it publicly. Third, it would suggest that Harry himself might have been kept in the dark, making him an unwitting participant in the situation rather than a knowing party to any deception. Bower offered an explanation for why the palace might have chosen silence over revelation. The timing is crucial to understanding this decision. In 2019, the royal family was already dealing with significant reputation damage from the scandal involving Prince Andrew and his association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. That situation had generated sustained negative media coverage and raised serious questions about judgment and accountability within the royal family. Public confidence in the institution was being tested. Adding another major scandal on top of the existing crisis could have been catastrophic. If the palace had confirmed that Archie was not Harry's biological child, the implications would have been enormous. It would have meant that the public had been deceived about a matter of succession. It would have raised questions about how such a situation could have occurred and why warning signs, if they existed, were not heeded. It would have created a media firestorm that could have fundamentally damaged the monarchy's credibility. The decision that Bower suggested was essentially a calculation of lesser evils. Revealing the truth might have been the morally correct choice in terms of transparency, but it could have led to consequences that threatened the very existence of the monarchy as a respected institution. Keeping the information hidden, while ethically questionable, would allow the institution to survive and potentially manage the situation more carefully over time. This kind of institutional self-preservation is not unique to the British monarchy. Many organisations, when faced with information that could be devastating if revealed, choose strategic silence. However, Bower argued that this silence created unintended consequences. By choosing not to address the questions about Archie's parentage, the palace inadvertently gave Meghan a form of protection. She could operate knowing that the palace would never publicly reveal information that would be so damaging to the institution itself. This dynamic, according to Bower, shifted the balance of power in ways that the palace had not fully anticipated. After Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in 2020, a move that became known as Megxit, they began speaking publicly about their experiences within the royal family. The interview with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021 was particularly significant. In that interview, they made several serious allegations, including claims about racism within the royal family and lack of support for Meghan's mental health struggles. The palace's response was measured and careful, with the famous line that recollections may vary, but that the matters raised would be addressed privately. Bower suggested that the palace's restrained response was not just about maintaining dignity or taking the high road. It was also about the underlying reality that any escalation could lead to revelations that would harm the monarchy more than it would harm Harry and Meghan. If the couple chose to make the situation more adversarial, there was always the risk that information about Archie's paternity could emerge in ways that the palace could not control. This created a situation where Meghan and Harry could speak relatively freely while the palace remained constrained. The most tragic figure in all of this, according to Bower's testimony, is Prince Harry himself. His life story has been marked by trauma, beginning with the death of his mother, Princess Diana, when he was just 12 years old. He grew up in the public eye, dealing with intense media scrutiny and the pressures of royal life. His relationship with Meghan was, by his own account, a chance at happiness and normalcy that he had long sought. Harry's public statements about his family, particularly in his memoir and in various interviews, reveal someone who feels deeply betrayed by the institution he was born into. He has spoken about feeling unsupported, about watching his wife struggle without receiving help from the royal household, and about making the difficult decision to leave Britain to protect his family. These are the words of someone who believes he is acting with integrity and courage. If Bower's claims are accurate, then Harry's entire understanding of his situation would be built on incomplete or false information. He would have sacrificed his relationship with his father and brother, his military appointments, his connection to his home country, all to protect a family unit that might not be what he believes it to be. The psychological impact of discovering such a deception would be profound. It would call into question every decision he has made since meeting Meghan, every bridge he has burned, every public statement he has made defending her and their children. Bower described Harry as existing in what he called a glass cage of lies. This metaphor suggests someone who is trapped but doesn't realize it, surrounded by a structure that appears transparent but actually distorts reality. Harry can see out, can interact with the world, but his perception of his own situation is fundamentally compromised by information he doesn't have access to. The response from Meghan and Harry's team following Bower's testimony was notably limited. In situations where the couple has felt wronged or misrepresented, their approach has typically been direct and legally aggressive. Meghan has successfully sued British newspapers for privacy violations. She has taken legal action over publication of a private letter to her father. The couple's lawyers have issued numerous statements correcting what they view as false reporting. Yet in the face of Bower's testimony, which makes claims far more serious than anything they have sued over previously, the response was muted. There was no immediate filing of a defamation lawsuit. There was no press release categorically denying the allegations. There was no offer to provide DNA evidence that would definitively disprove the claims. This absence of the usual vigorous defense raised questions among observers. One possible explanation is that their legal team advised them that engaging with the accusations would be counterproductive. Defamation lawsuits require proving not just that statements are false, but often that they were made with malicious intent or reckless disregard for the truth. In the UK, defamation law has been reformed in recent years to make it more difficult for wealthy individuals to silence critics. A lawsuit against Bower would also open the door to discovery, the legal process where both sides can demand evidence from each other. This could potentially force Meghan and Harry to provide the very DNA evidence they have not volunteered. Another possibility is that they are simply exhausted by years of media battles and chose not to engage with what they view as yet another baseless conspiracy theory. However, this explanation sits uneasily with the seriousness of the allegations and their potential impact on Archie's future. The situation also raises questions about Archie himself and his younger sister, Lilibet. These children are growing up in California, largely shielded from the media attention that their parents experienced. If the questions about Archie's parentage continue to circulate and potentially gain credibility, he will eventually become aware of them. The impact on a child's sense of identity and security could be significant. Even if the allegations are completely false, the fact that they exist and are discussed publicly could affect how he understands himself and his place in the world. For the institution of the monarchy, the situation presents ongoing challenges. King Charles, who ascended to the throne following Queen Elizabeth's death in 2022, has had to navigate the delicate balance of maintaining relationships with his younger son while also protecting the integrity of the institution. Prince William, as heir to the throne, has his own perspective shaped by his position and his reportedly strained relationship with Harry. The legal proceedings that brought Tom Bower's testimony into public view represent only the beginning of what could be a prolonged and increasingly complex situation. Court cases of this nature, particularly those involving allegations about the royal family, rarely reach a tidy conclusion quickly. The British legal system moves with deliberation, and cases involving matters of public interest often face appeals, counterclaims, and procedural delays that can extend for years. What makes this particular situation especially complicated is the intersection of multiple areas of law and constitutional principle. There are questions of defamation and whether Bower's claims constitute actionable false statements. There are questions of privacy, particularly regarding genetic information and medical records. There are constitutional questions about the line of succession and what standards of proof would be required to alter it. And there are questions about jurisdiction, given that Harry and Meghan now reside in California, where different legal standards apply than in the United Kingdom. For Harry and Meghan, the decision about how to respond legally involves weighing several difficult considerations. Filing a defamation lawsuit against Bower would bring the matter fully into the legal arena, where standards of evidence are rigorous and where both sides would have the ability to compel production of documents and testimony. This process, known as discovery, could require them to produce communications, travel records, medical documents, and potentially genetic testing results. The prospect of such an invasion into their private lives, even in service of defending their reputation, may be deeply unappealing. On the other hand, choosing not to sue allows Bauer's allegations to stand in the public record without formal challenge. In defamation law, there is a principle that silence can sometimes be interpreted as acknowledgement, though this is not a legal standard. More practically, the longer serious allegations go without definitive refutation, the more they can take root in public consciousness. What begins as shocking claims can, over time, become accepted narrative for some portion of the population. The palace faces its own impossible calculus. If there is indeed genetic testing evidence stored securely as Bauer claimed, the decision about whether to ever release it involves weighing institutional survival against truth and transparency. Releasing evidence that confirmed Bauer's claims would validate years of speculation and potentially require action to remove Archie from the line of succession. This would be unprecedented in modern times and could trigger a constitutional crisis about how such situations should be handled. Conversely, if evidence exists that would completely exonerate Harry and Meghan and prove Archie's parentage beyond doubt, the decision not to release it seems almost incomprehensible. Why allow doubt to persist if it could be eliminated? The possible explanations range from a desire to protect the privacy of a minor child to more cynical interpretations about maintaining leverage or avoiding setting precedents about royal privacy. Public opinion on these matters remains deeply divided. Some people view the allegations as yet another example of unfair targeting of Meghan, who has faced intense and often racially tinged criticism since she began her relationship with Harry. They see Bauer's testimony as part of a pattern of attempts to delegitimize her and her children. From this perspective, the requests for DNA evidence and the questioning of Archie's parentage represent an invasion of privacy that would never be demanded of other royal family members. Others view the questions as legitimate, given the unusual circumstances surrounding Archie's birth and the constitutional implications of the line of succession. They argue that individuals who are in line to potentially inherit the throne, even if that likelihood is remote, should be subject to verification that would not be required of private citizens. The monarchy, in this view, involves public responsibilities that necessitate transparency about bloodline in ways that may seem intrusive but are justified by the public nature of the institution. The role of the media in amplifying or investigating these claims adds another dimension to the situation. Mainstream British media outlets have generally been cautious about how they report on Bauer's testimony, often framing it as allegations rather than established facts. However, social media and alternative media platforms have no such restraint. The claims have circulated widely, been analysed exhaustively, and been incorporated into broader narratives about Meghan, Harry, and the royal family. This creates an environment where millions of people are forming opinions based on incomplete information filtered through their existing beliefs and biases. Some people accept Bauer's claims almost immediately because they align with their skepticism about Meghan. Others reject them just as quickly because they view them as part of coordinated attacks against her. The actual evidence, which remains largely hidden from public view, becomes almost secondary to the tribal nature of these debates. For Trevor Engelson, the situation must be extraordinarily difficult, regardless of what the truth actually is. If Bauer's claims are false and Engelson had no ongoing relationship with Meghan after their divorce, he finds himself publicly associated with a conspiracy theory that damages his reputation and privacy. If the claims have any basis in truth, he faces the prospect of being drawn into a scandal of historic proportions that could expose him to legal, financial, and personal consequences he never anticipated. His continued silence is notable but difficult to interpret. Non-disclosure agreements related to divorce settlements are common, particularly when one party has significant financial resources or public profile. Such agreements typically prohibit both parties from discussing details of the marriage, the divorce, or the settlement terms. Violating such an agreement can result in financial penalties and legal action. This could explain Engelson's silence even in the face of being named in such serious allegations. However, there are limits to what non-disclosure agreements can cover. They generally cannot prevent someone from testifying truthfully if legally compelled to do so by a court. If these legal proceedings continue to develop, and if Engelson is subpoenaed to testify, he would face a choice between maintaining his silence at risk of being held in contempt of court or providing testimony that could have massive ramifications. The impact on Archie and Lilibet, the two children at the center of these storms, cannot be overstated. They are being raised in California, reportedly in an environment that their parents have worked to make as normal as possible given the circumstances. Yet these children will grow up in a world where questions about their parentage and their place in the royal family are part of the public record. Search engines will return these allegations. School peers will potentially be aware of the controversies. The psychological impact of this is difficult to predict, but could be significant. Harry has spoken frequently about his desire to protect his children from the kind of media intrusion that he believes contributed to his mother's death and damaged his own childhood. The irony is that the steps he and Meghan have taken to achieve that privacy, including moving to California and limiting their children's public exposure, have in some ways fueled rather than dampened speculation. The less the public sees of the children, the more questions seem to proliferate. Looking forward, several possible scenarios could unfold. The legal proceedings could continue through appeals and counter-motions for years, with the core questions remaining unresolved. A settlement could be reached where Bauer agrees to retract or modify his claims in exchange for the Sussexes dropping any legal action, though this seems unlikely given that both sides appear committed to their positions. New evidence could emerge, either supporting or refuting Bauer's allegations, that shifts the entire narrative. Or the situation could gradually fade from public attention as other royal dramas take center stage, leaving the questions permanently unanswered. What seems certain is that the relationship between Harry and the rest of the royal family has been damaged in ways that may be irreparable. Whether Bauer's specific allegations are true or false, the fact that such questions are being asked publicly and under oath represents a level of dysfunction that is remarkable even for a family that has experienced its share of public difficulties over the years.